on the air. A call to order. Any disclosure, any peculiar interest? Conflicts? And I guess basically we're here for, and I have to move this, right? It will be a Deputy Mayor Faulkner, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. The Town of Minto Council convenes in the Committee of the Whole to conduct budgetary deliberations. All in favor? Carried. Okay. And here we are, and I'll turn it over to Bill. And
well, Mayor Bridge, thank you. You do have a section where you're to provide an introduction. So
am I? Oh, right here.
Is there anything you have to say to get us started today?
Oh, well, I don't. I didn't have anything written up. Just that this is a great opportunity for everybody to voice any concerns they may have on the budget. I know the staff have done an amazing job of bringing it to this point, and now it's up to us to have a look at it, and if we see any shortcomings or we want to do anything with it, then we can go back to staff. And this is just we're just talking about the capital budget today. We've already had a meeting on the operating. And remember, I just remind everybody that the numbers are there, and there's some percentages, and that we'll get into it in the thing. But I just want to remember everybody, last year we thought we had a certain percentage because there's changes in certain, what do they call those, Gord?
Ratios
that the county can adjust and do things with between industrial, commercial, and residential. Sometimes we would maybe say, here's what the residential rate's going to be. And last year, for instance, we thought it was around 3, was it last year?
Yes, we were going for an overall 3, and there were many changes to ratios and shifts between assessment classes, and we ended up with, for an average house, at $215,000 of a 1.6% all in.
So I really want the council to look at today, not thinking of percentages, but thinking of what's on the paper and what we're trying to accomplish in the next year as far as budgets and all the work on the capital. And then we still have another opportunity because we will have another review in March after the public meeting, and we'll have a better idea, hopefully by ratios by then and all the other stuff. So at that point, there'll be a truer figure. I just don't, and maybe this is for the press. I mean, it's hard. We kind of have these numbers that we put out there, early budgetary figures on where we're going to be and whatever, and I see it all the time out there. But at the end of the day, until we get those ratios done and everything, we never really know what our true number is until, right, March or April, right?
Yes, because us being lower tier, we're dependent on the county bylaw, which we have to replace. And traditionally, that's been the last meeting in April.
Yeah. So we have some opportunities. But so really, let's concentrate what's on the pages, see if we think this is a comfortable capital budget, what we're trying to accomplish, and then we'll work on the figures down the road. Okay? Yes, Judy.
So it turned out really good last year.
It did, yes.
Because we started at 3%, which is, I don't know, in my mind, I would like to have it 3 or a little less. Like, that's kind of my ballpark figure. I know we're not supposed to be talking about percentages, but I guess my concern is, so let's say the ratios are done, the county's done, the education's done, and it ends up being something like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8.
Well, we have to
something.
Definitely.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter how good the numbers look. We're going back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be an opportunity, Judy, at that point, once we see the final number, because we'll know the final number going into the process of approving.
Okay.
And when we talk to 1.63, we're talking residential, right?
Yes, I understand that. Yes.
And so because commercial and industrial can go up and down. The good news this year and last year, even at this time, I don't think we had the education.
We have the education.
We have the education piece this year. Last year, we were even actually working in the dark on that, not knowing. So it's pretty well.
It's gone from 0.179 to 0.172. So down a little.
It's very little. It changed.
Yeah, again, and it's set on a province-wide. So if Ottawa area, GTA go up, Southwestern Ontario goes down. And
so that's one thing.
Say the difference again, Gord.
Right now, this is for residential, so it's 0.00179 for 2017, and that's going to be 0.00172.
Oh,
so it's like point. Yeah,
I thought you said 1 point.
No, it's like 0.007.
Okay.
So it's sort of taken that out of the works. We know it's pretty well even, so we're not going to. That shouldn't be an effect.
I think
on our
our
number.
Super preliminary on our typical house that's gone from 215 to 224, it was like 43 cents.
Yes.
Like, so that's not being a factor, but we weren't sure.
Okay.
We're never sure of that either until.
Okay.
So that's good. So turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge.
Now they confused everybody.
It turns out you did have an introduction.
Yeah.
Our budget theme is bringing it home, and we're bringing home a responsible operating and capital budget using the current federal provincial tools in place. And as we know, 2018 is a time of reevaluating, so we'll see what happens at the end of this year, the makeup of council, the makeup of the provincial government, and then in 2019, of course, there's a federal election too. So I think the next 2 years will be where are we with the senior levels of government and the program that has been established. From our December 12th budget, so that's what, just under a month ago, we have not made any changes. It just simply wasn't enough time to put together a capital budget and have a real good look at operating and anything that we might be able to change there. You do have an opportunity to make changes, as we mentioned, moving forward through the open house, which is scheduled for March 20th. Just a reminder, we have to raise $235,000 additional dollars based on what you considered in the operating last meeting. That's made up of 6 key components. There are other little ups and downs in various departments, but mainly the $172,000 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund reduction makes up a good chunk of that $235,000. So essentially, from tax, we're raising $62,000 new dollars. It's about 1.5%, if you want to. Not that we want to use percentages, but that's one that you could use. The pay policy, we talked about internal, external, and pay equity. That's $80,000. We have $55,000 throughout the facilities department in some added costs for staffing. We are not filling the public works director position, and we're only talking about tax here. That's $70,000 in tax that we're not putting in this year. And we've decreased the structural grant for facades, and so that's a $20,000 savings. There's still an adequate amount in that fund, the business and economic manager believes. So we still have a healthy program there, but there is a savings by taking that bit out. And then you've actually increased your tax-supported capital by $10,000. Treasurer mentioned what the impact on the typical residential property is. In 2017, that 3% became 1.63 after the adjustment of these ratios. In the urban commercial property owners, so that's your downtown businesses, actually after the reassessment changes saved $22,000 in taxes, so for 22% in taxes. It's a couple $1,000, some of them. Sort of the average commercial ratepayer had a tax deduction last year. So if you combine the two for this year as proposed and last year as approved, you're looking at about 2.5% per year overall. Between 2011 and 2017, so the term of the last council and this council, you're roughly $32 million in capital improvements. If you do the improvements outlined in this budget, for those of you who don't continue on after your second terms, you're looking at having done $40 million in capital work over your 2 terms of council, and that I think is a substantial amount of money, but that arrives at our $5 million roughly annual figure that we always try and shoot for. So there is a chart, and I'll go through the presentation now, just a review of our agenda. And I always like to provide the plan framework so you can recall where this fits in as far as the strategic plan. And on that slide, we're down at the bottom of the slide in the green area where the business plans were presented at the operating budget, and we get your direction on implementing those business plans through operating and capital expenditures. The succession plan is in yellow there, and just a quick reminder, a bit of a theme at the last budget meeting was succession planning. We know at least 20% of our workforce is going to retire within 4 years. So we have where every challenge there's an opportunity. So we'll have some positions to work with in the structure then. And I think that the $80,000 in investment is something that keeps us competitive and allows this council and the next to continue to be successful moving people forward in the ranks, or if necessary, attracting new talent. Our vision and mission is as outlined. I think we are pretty consistent with those goals and that modus operandi. So we're always wanting to make sure we follow our strategic plan. We have 98 total actions in that plan, and there's a breakdown in that slide of whether they're short-term, medium-term, long-term, or ongoing. I did mention we would like to have a public meeting in 2018 on the strategic plan just to make sure we're right-sizing ourselves, right-directioning ourselves, and that work has already began at the business or the Planning and Economic Development Committee, where they had as a critical look at the strategic plan and whether they're on the right course there. The organizational structure hasn't changed a great deal. This year we will not be filling the Public Works Director position unless Council has a change of heart in the next couple months. So we are 41 full-time positions, one up from 2010, and that's including taking over the full operation of your sewage plants, so the 2 lagoons and the Palmerston system. And back in 2010, that was contracted out. So I think we have had increases in staff. I think we've tried to be moderate in that. We've tried to be creative as a council by cross-training people and so forth. There's some mandates that we've talked about before, and I won't go into that. The reason for the increase in staffing in facilities was simply the number of new facilities that we have. And so there's the operating budget as it currently stands. We can go have a chat about each of those individual ones later if you'd like. The $234,832 is kind of at the bottom right-hand side of that slide. So that's your operating budget as it currently stands.
CO White, what are the figures in the far right column?
Those are some totals, if I may, that I made of some of the departments. So they don't, unless you were able to look at the formulas in each of them, they're really were more guidelines than anything.
Just as you know, my interest is trail. What's that 55,000 mean?
I think that's the net increase in facilities through all the departments. So if you add in Hairston Arena and Hall, all those from Clifford Arena and Hall down to trails, that's a net increase of 55,000.
So that would be on capital assets.
No, those are operating budgets.
Just straight operating.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, 55. Okay, thank you.
So the distribution of the tax dollar, this one kind of ebbs and flows. This is kind of an old diagram, but it really hasn't changed dramatically. We're sitting around 37%. And 45,000 raises 1%. The only point I have on this distribution of the budget is after Public Works and Fire, you're 49% of all other services. So Public Works is the biggest portion, and then Fire is next, followed by some of the others, recreation and so forth. This slide was to remind you of where we are on provincial funding. While we did have a $172,000 drop in our annual operating grant, we had an increase in our annual capital grant, the OCIF formula-based funding, Community Infrastructure Fund. So, but we have a net loss of $80,000.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And then as far as tax-supported reserves to debt, we are at 107,000 in the good, for lack of a better way of putting it, this year. So we're putting 100,000 more, 100,000 plus into reserves in this operating budget. This is the Treasurer's favorite chart, and one that we put forward to you because your fiscal accountability policy talks about making sure that our reserves exceed our debt. So in that chart, the red is our reserves, and the Treasurer will always remind you that the red reserves, while they are there, they are not liquid. So we can't rush out and find $9 million tomorrow if we had to do that. So some of them are tied up in West Ontario and so forth, and others are related to the water services and long-term capital planning for that. The blue slide is our debt. So you can see it's kind of fluctuated in around $6 to $8 million roughly since 2011. So our debt and even with the 1.52 million in borrowing that we're proposing in the capital budget this year, would not dramatically increase in 2018 because we're paying off debt, obviously. So, and the 2019 forecast shows those both dropping. So, I mean, 2019, it's a trend line. It really depends on what the next council wants to do, but
Just out of curiosity, Gord, is that the arena roofs coming off? The big drop, I think, in 2019.
Yeah, the biggest change in 2008, we had about a $2.1 million debenture.
Right.
It was divided roughly 60-40 between 10-year and 20-year, so that 10-year part will drop off. And
That's why
roofs are part of it, but there's some other things. Okay. The other 10 years will continue on. We'll have to refinance.
Was that when we did the water towers too, Ron, in 2008?
There was a little bit of water tower. I think there was some servicing in the industrial park too, way back. Yeah.
All right. But that's why, so that 10-year part of that 20-year.
That's the only one that's going to drop in the next 6 years or so. Right now.
I know council's always been mindful of that. I know as staff, we were concerned about that, always that ratio. I think we've been careful as we can, and you are consistent with your fiscal accountability policy. But when you do $40 million worth of work as a small municipality, you're going to have to borrow. And we were talking with the chair of finance and the mayor and treasurer myself. I really believe that has been for lack of a better word, a huge PR campaign from the province beginning 10 years ago to force municipalities to invest and borrow to fund their infrastructure needs. And all of this asset management planning and the PSAB guidelines, all that stuff, agreements when the gas tax started to be leveraged out over the last 10 years, all was forcing, directing, or encouraging, however they could, to get municipalities to better plan for their assets and to replace their capital works. And I think we've taken that to heart here. And I would say this goes back to the 3 terms ago at least, where I think they took some pretty bold steps back then as far as our water systems. So I don't know, Gord, if you want to talk a little bit about the asset management.
Perhaps you've seen a flurry of emails in the Christmas holidays. Reg, I think it's 58807 came down, and that is the prescriptiveness of the asset management plan. I just had a seminar, a really high level one at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and again, it's going to really formalize, as CEO White was saying, what we have to put in our asset management plans, and probably within the next couple of months, we're going to have an update on our asset management roadmap, which is going to accomplish a lot of those objectives, but it's going to kind of force us to take our whole capital budget, link it to the capital management, and also engage with the public on levels of service, because that's kind of the name of the game. We're here to provide services. Do our assets enable us to provide those services? If not, why not? And we have to formally decide what is the appropriate level of service, and you get into what assets do you need in that too. So it's certainly coming. It's a very ambitious set of regulations, so thankfully they've eased up on the timeline. So the first thing is July 1st of 19, when we have to have a strategic asset management policy, and that'll include a lot of that too. So, I mean, we're well on the road. It's a good idea, but it's certainly it's a process. You're never complete.
So the 5-year capital plan funding slide, you can see 2017, and this is subject to final year-end numbers. We will be pretty close to our expected expenditures, but $6 million last year, 7.771 proposed this year, and then 2019 through 2022. So we've got 5 years there. That this year is based on the capital project plan, which if you read the staff report and you had a look through, we put forward to you for the first time, so council could see kind of what the staff had behind the scenes as far as projects. And the reason we did that is you've heard us harping about the annual grant programs that hopefully the province and the feds will continue. Basically our $1 million shovel-ready project each year. So we've put some of those projects in that capital project plan for you to see and tried to position them in there so that there's kind of that $6 to $5 million capital amount coming forward. That doesn't mean you're approving those projects for 2019, 2020, or any year beyond that. It just shows you how it could happen depending on circumstances. And the new council at each budget will have to look at the priorities, look at what grant programs are available, how successful we've been, and do what projects they can do. But if you look at that, you'll see in there improvements in the Harrison Industrial Park. Remember, we approved the Class EA this year on that, so that could service another 66 acres of industrial land in Harrison in the next 5 years. It includes the lift station in Palmerston to service additional lands in that industrial park. It includes projects like Queen Street in Harrison. It includes the Palmerston Main Street downtown. So if the next council wants the challenge of taking that one on, then it's in that budget. So it kind of gives you a chance to look forward as to where things might go. And I think it's a good thing to do that, and I give credit to public works people and the department heads for putting their minds to this and making sure it was kind of rational. Don't think of speaking too far out of tune when the roads and drainage foreman comes forward with $9 million in capital for this year. We knew we couldn't do that, but I think he's making a point that there's a lot of need out there. So and I think one of the biggest challenges we'll have going forward is how we will fund our roads projects, because there's not a lot of money for that. Once the Connecting Link program is over, then we're almost on our own as far as roads go. Water and sewer, they've kind of taken care of. So that will be a challenge, but that could change. They could announce something different too. So the 5-year fire department capital plan is shown there. And I don't know if the chief wants to come up or if he wants to speak from there. He can go through what he has in mind for this year and the coming years. We tried to include some pictures in the presentation to keep your interest up. One of the fun projects is the Clifford Fire Hall.
Better idea.
With so many of us here, we made the executive decision we're going to stay back here. Because I can't get out. It's pretty routine capital budget for us, except for the new pumper truck. In the 25-year truck plan that you've seen many times before over your term, the truck is due to be replaced in 2019. What it does by passing in this year's budget is allows us to order it, because we know that the trucks are a year to manufacture. So by ordering it and going to tender and ordering it this year, it would be delivered in 2019, and the bulk of it would be then paid for in 2019. So it'd be in this budget, but it'd be a carryover, we already know, to 2019 where we pay for it then. That's the truck that's being replaced. It's 20 years. It'll be 20 years old in 2019. And yeah, I have rode in that truck all 20 years, unfortunately. Yeah, I am old. Then the rest of it's just bunker gear we buy every year. We buy boots just to keep on top of it. We buy so many sets every year, so we don't end up buying 80 sets altogether, which would be a huge cost. Boots, helmets, all that stuff. The Clifford renovation is we just want to start getting ready to do it. It's not a huge renovation inside, but we do need proper washroom facilities and a shower. There's no showers in the Clifford Fire Hall, so we need that. We can move the bunker gear into a bunker gear room. That type of stuff is what we're talking about for renovation. But we want to just drop some plans and kind of be ready to see where it would cost us. The only thing that might put a wrench in it is the old vault is in there still from the town of Clifford days. So we don't know how we build around that without taking it out. Hopefully we can just leave it in there. So it's just planning for that is all that money's for. And then training equipment is just our routine. We need some valves. We need some, what else is in there? Trying to think. There's just a list of equipment. Oh yeah, our thermal imaging cameras are 10 years old, so we're replacing those because technology changes so fast that 10 years is obsolete. Um,
Some medical equipment?
medical, we need to buy some SpO2 monitors, which is a little probe that you just put on your finger to measure your blood oxygen levels. Because the new regulations, you don't put oxygen on everybody, you just put oxygen if their sats are below so many percentages. That's our new guidelines. So there's a lot of little equipment in there, like $500 to $1,000 pieces of equipment that make up that. So it just grouped under that category. So it's routine for us. Just the big item is the pumper truck, which we have been putting into reserves for years, and it's just more or less pre-ordering it for 2019.
And I guess on that, that's coming into reserves. So
For the pumper, yeah, what we'll do, I think we've done this on the last two trucks and then this one, so we'll put it in 19, and then there's usually well over 200,000 goes into the reserve anyway, so then we'll take it out again in 19.
that's not actually hitting the tax.
Not directly. I guess the reserve contribution
Yeah,
is,
the reserve
but
contribution does. Yeah.
Mayor Bridge, just one final point. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. At the importance of showing budgeted figures in this year's budget, because of the municipal election after a certain date in July, assuming the council becomes lame duck, we cannot make any expenditures over $50,000 unless they're budgeted. So it's very important to put that particular vehicle and some of the other expenditures in there. Some of the projects may start earlier than others, but by having them in there, then we can have some flexibility to proceed. Obviously, we won't do anything that you haven't sort of seen here, but think of it as kind of setting everything on a shelf. And then once we get into July and August, if we have to move things around on that shelf, we'll take the direction from you. But you can't add anything into it after that date in July.
And sorry, any questions on the fire truck? Ask that every time. Yeah, you feel free just to jump in whenever you want, right?
You bet.
So moving on to Public Works, we have a number of slides for this section, and hopefully the three managers would chime in as need be. If you don't mind, I'll start with Clifford. And so the way this works, and Clifford is our biggest target area this year for capital work. A couple years ago it was Harriston, and then Palmerston probably be bigger in a few years. But we'd be spending $3.9 million in Clifford this year if the council sees fit to approve the budget as proposed, and $6.73 million over the next 5 years. You see basically Elora Street being reconstructed from one end to the other, and then the Ann Street project in there getting some paving and curbing and drainage in to as certain blocks are finished there. So that's basically splitting that up into two separate blocks. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute of the air photo of Clifford related to the Clifford Elora Street project, but I'd like you to have a peek at Ann Street and also at Brown Street, and we can kind of see the benefit of infilling. And while we have spent some dollars on Ann Street and William Street and will be on and did on Brown Street, you do have and will have homes there that'll be paying into your water and sewer systems and paying taxes, hopefully for a very long period of time. And these are roads that we were already maintaining, so it's essentially revenue for the municipality for the next 40, 50 years. Some of the past projects are shown on that. I don't know if Mark or Robertson or Wayne Metzger wanted to provide information on their two projects that are shown there, the wastewater Allen tank or the water main project. The Allen Street water main project, basically what we're suggesting is doing some of that work as part of the Elora Street reconstruction and going beyond our construction limit boundaries and then picking up on that next year. So those are in there. But just Clifford Elora Street. So you'll recall we did from Grimes Lumber into Park Street this year, approximately $400,000 for that grind and resurface work. So that was phase 1, and then we've broken the project up into phases 2A, 2B, and 3. And just for council's information, that project is on our website as of today and is out for bid. So it's pretty exciting that we're going ahead. Section 2A from Park to Allen, we hope will be done in about a month, so a month to 6 weeks. And then Section 2B is the rest of the sort of Main Street type of project work. And then Section 3, which is the area from James Street out to West Heritage Road, that is the reconstruction and servicing of the North Clifford area. You recall we did have a secondary plan done for that section and presented to the public. It's not an approved secondary plan, but it gave some guidance to this overall project. So in phases 2A and 2B, we'll be removing asphalt, installing new storm sewers, excavating the road base and placing new granulars, new concrete curb and gutter, sidewalks, street lights, trees, bollards, the traditional downtown approach that we did in Harrison in 2015, I guess, and hope to do in Palmerston in a few more years from now. But Section 3 will open up those large blocks of land for future development. So just wanted to have a look, and I'll show you on the screen, Ann Street North. You can, it maybe shows up a little better on the next slide. Basically, for 5 blocks of Ann Street, you had no homes on one side of that street. And by the time we're done with all our sales, we'll have 20-some homes in there. And so you were plowing that road, you had a sewer on that road, we had to relocate water main out of backyards onto that street anyway. So now, as a result of your efforts in getting those lands sold off, you will have almost an entire infill, so that makes the cost of maintaining that particular section of roadway and servicing quite a bit less. Similarly, on Brown Street and William Street, where the ball field was, we were plowing and maintaining those roads and those services with the Schwint development that council has approved for that site, and the 7 units that have gone ahead already. Again, you have people paying into your systems to help you maintain that. So I think the figure was 45 or 46 new homes in Clifford as a result of your servicing Ann Street and doing the servicing work on the old ball field. And the community, of course, even replaced that ball field. So they were excellent on doing that. This slide shows your 2 sections of downtown Clifford work and the detours, which use Park Street, Minto Road, and West Heritage. We hope that with the first section between Park and Allen being a month, starting hopefully in May or June, the latest, that we can have that open and working so that we are more comfortable doing the William Street work with Mr. Schwint. I have talked to him just this week. He is going to increase his contribution to his lateral servicing, so he's seen that our costs have gone up. And you'll recall I think those who were on council before will remember we had an estimate to do Brown and William at $120,000, but that was just laterals. But we have ultra-width piping in there. We found that it's better to replace that when you're connecting to it 6 or 7 times in a block. So the section 2B again shows the detour routes there. Interestingly enough, in the Clifford 5-year plan, we have Park Street, because once we're done putting all that traffic on it for a good chunk of the summer, it's along with the water and sewer is going to need repairs. So that's a typical intersection. So I think you can have a pretty good idea what that project will look like. We are not replacing the sanitary sewer on that section. We've cambered it, assessed it, and it will not be removed. If we did remove it, it would be a much longer project. But the engineers are comfortable that it is of a suitable condition. Also, to let you know that the electrical power lines will all be buried within 2 or 3 blocks. I'm not exactly sure the number. There's additional money in that budget to try and do that. And we're working with Westerio on cost sharing on that work. They have a primary line through there, and I believe they're relocating it. But their poles are also old, so they'll be happy that they don't have to bear that cost of replacing those. But it's going to really make a big difference down there. Actually, look, there's a lot of hydro line in that section of Clifford.
But this gives West Terry an opportunity to upgrade some of their stuff that causes some concerns for outages in Clifford as well. So in the design, and I won't get into details, but they are working on that as well. Wayne would know more than I do on it, but I think they were talking, Wayne, I think about the loop or something. Can you remember what they were saying in that meeting?
Yeah, they're talking about putting a loop in around Getty Street back over to William, and then that would be able to get rid of still keep you a loop going across the intersection at Allen, and then they can eliminate the three-phase line that goes on Elora Street basically from John at this time through to Getty's then, and everything else could be put underground, and that would help with the looks of the downtown core, and with that open bus infrastructure that they got, it'll certainly look a lot neater and be a lot safer for everybody.
You said eliminate the three-phase line. Is there not a need for three-phase anymore, or why are they eliminating that?
Well, it'll still be in there, but it'll be underground, but it won't be as a loop. It'll only be in there to feed servicing.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, where you'll have still your main loops will be more to the back streets.
So they're not eliminating it.
No, it's just rerouting it so that it better suits to feed the town. And with a loop in the system, then there's less chance of outages. If you have a fire or something in an area, you got an isolated area or something. The more loops, the better it is for the rest of the customers to stay energized while they go through whatever the situation may be.
You can see the decorative features that have been selected by the business and economic manager through the consultant, and obviously they'll be able to go along with a lot of our banner programs and so forth, which they weren't able to do in the past in Clifford. So we're very happy about that.
I think on that, if you remember, signed to Gary Zachary, I think they've got like pre-sold
16 pre-sold, and they've got room for, I think it's 6 more. So a total of 22
of the veterans banners.
Yeah.
So they're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, so if anybody, that's a good point to bring up, because if anybody's thinking about that, get hold of Gary now, because we figure it's going to be sold out within the next month.
So Mayor Bridge, on that major project in Clifford, we're looking at $4.22 million over time. 2.7 of that comes out of the Connecting Link program. So we're 1.52 million. That is the source of your main borrowing this year, is for that project. And just a word on the section between James and West Heritage Street. The Treasurer has financed that project primarily through borrowing, our share of it. We are looking for developer contributions there, but that will depend on when and where they develop. And our hope was that in the range of $500,000 can be recuperated over time as major development occurs in that section. So we are pre-servicing that area. There is a chance that water lines will go in, and that development may be a few years, or it may happen quicker. So, but I think in speaking with council over time and hearing from members of the community at the open house and so forth, I believe that they would like you to do this work. You can pull that out. It's not funded under the grant program. It's entirely funded under the systems and the borrowing primarily out of that. So, but it will set the stage for some major developments in Clifford. So we've always, we all know that probably 8 years ago we didn't think there'd be 45 new homes built in Clifford as fast as they have been. So will these 100 acres of lands develop, and how long? I don't know, but I hope we're pleasantly surprised and start coming pretty quickly. We do hear from developers.
I was just going to say, Bill, we've had some discussions, and I believe next week we're actually going to sit down with some people too, and talk about where the plans are and how far along they are in their plans. So I'm very confident that especially with Clifford being, we don't have a lot of saleable properties being left in Clifford. Opening up this while we're doing the work anyways makes a lot of sense. and it'll be money well spent because I think we'll start recouping that back fairly quickly. I'm pretty positive on Clifford these days. I don't know what everybody else feels, but.
Is there any questions on anything to do with Clifford, Capital Works, Public Works?
No, just let's get through it.
As I mentioned, it's out for tender today.
And we're having a great building summer. I hope no rain. That's when we need it.
With us then.
Yeah.
So our goal is phase 1, 2, and 3 will be done in 2018, right?
Yes.
And that, what are our chances that that's going to happen? Pretty good?
Again, it's weather related, and you can never get a straight answer out of the engineers, but I think they're pretty good. But that's with the caveat that between James and West Heritage, that road's closed the whole summer. The section that we just talked about, that's closed the whole summer.
The whole summer?
Yes. Yeah, from the start to finish of that project. So, and Whiteman knows that, and W.C. Smith and others out there know we'll have to accommodate access into those places. And Business and Economic Manager has a plan, and we'll continue to work with those groups. But like in Hairston, we'll have signs saying this is open. We'll be marketing that these businesses are open, and we'll be helping direct people into those areas. And of course, we have that new parking lot that you purchased right at Allen and Elora to try and help out with that, to get people as close to those businesses as we can. But the only way you finish it is by closing that section the whole summer. That sewer is 16 feet down, so it'll be a huge hole.
A big hole.
Yeah. Be really fascinating to watch.
So really, can I ask a question on that part? So really, the only business that's going to be largely affected would be Whiteman, because W.C. Smith can get off of West Heritage Road, right?
Well, there's Van Isles trailers out there, and we can
Yep, him as well, though, can get off of West Heritage Road.
I think he can.
Yeah, probably you can. Yes, yep.
Yep, can. And behind, back where Ron Toppin, there's a road allowance or something in there. I think that
it'll be a challenge like any community when you do this work. I mean, there's going to be a noticeable decrease in traffic, and but I think we've been upfront, and everybody's pretty well aware of it, and I think we'll have more meetings to come.
I think it'll go good.
Hairston. At Hairston, we're talking about only $820,000 worth of work this year, $6.75 million over 5 years. I remember Hairston had the Digging It project a few years back, so they benefited. What was that? 4 or 5 million?
Yeah, the SCF project.
So the projects we have there are finishing up George Street South, some preparatory work around the Hairston Senior School development. One of our obligations under that agreement of purchase and sale for that was to put the water and sewer lines up William Street from George. So there is some money to do that. Lawrence Street, which also will go into that subdivision, is due for reconstruction anyway. So we've phased money in this year or next in the event that they're able to proceed this year with that project, that subdivision. There's no money in there for anything to do with the townhouse project. The townhouse services itself. It's a private development. The forgiveness on development charges that council gave are because there was a senior school on there, so it was contributing to water and sewer demands all those years. And it's not right to charge them development charges when they're not really increasing the demand. So we've subtracted the demand it theoretically created before from them, and that's the reduction in the development charges. But along George Street, all of those lots, they paid full development charges. They'll pay full development charges in Lawrence Street, and they also paid on George Street towards the reconstruction of that road, which we did 2014, 15, and around then. So this would finish off, put the curb on the north side, and put the final lift of asphalt on there. We'll see where we are there. If everybody is, like, there's 2 or 3 lots left to service, if they're all done, then we can put the curb in and finish that off, and it'll look a lot better. So that's what those funds are, and then also the pumping station on John Street in the industrial park. You approved that project late in 2017, and that brings that forward in 2018 for completion. The other projects in there are, I mentioned the Queen Street North and South. You had a debate about whether to do Queen Street in Palmerston or Queen Street in Hairston. You picked Palmerston, so that project sits there for 2019-2020. And then the industrial park projects that we've talked about that were part of the Class EA, you see in 2021, 2020, 21, and 22.
Just the work at the end of John Street, will that change substantially if Shikadance eventually decides to start into his project?
On John Street, not necessarily, but on George Street, for sure, because you see George Street North.
No, but it wouldn't affect that pumping station on John Street.
No, but they do need to get to that pumping station
exactly.
from the highway. So that's a project that and that's probably the main reason why that subdivision doesn't go ahead, is that chunk of sanitary sewer work between basically the Tim Hortons and John Street. That's a force main in there. We do have a property there that could be a potential commercial property someday, and we may want to cost share on that one. It's not in the 5-year plan here, but that's one that if Shikadance came in next year and said, look, we really want to sign a subdivision agreement to get going, then we might put that forward in 2019 or 2020. There's no shortage of projects to put here in Harrison.
No.
Because John Street really, I mean, it took a beating in the Digging It project. It probably needs to be done all the way to Laura Street. Arthur, sorry.
Yeah.
But I don't know the sewer and water under there if they're due for a replacement. Again, as priorities change, that's what the 5-year project plan is for.
But I think, didn't we, Bill, talk about John Street, if we were doing more, if we needed more industrial land, we were working on water going through there to upgrade the water.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be when you'd probably want to do John Street. But if we can hang on till then, if we need to have more industrial land to get that big piece open, because remember we needed to get rid of the storm water pond, we had to bring bigger water out there.
Yeah, the John Street Industrial Road in the industrial park in Hairston should be redone.
Yeah,
and it's in there for the next few years.
Yeah, it's in there, but
And if Farm Fresh were ever to go ahead with an expansion, then you might advance that one too. So
right.
Question on any of the pedestrian crossovers? Those are those ones that you have partway done in Palmerston. And the weather just caught up with us there, but that's what they actually cost to put in. So if you wanted a couple of those in Hairston, that's what they cost.
Where do you see that?
They're in 2020 and 2021.
2021.
So, no, council talked about one at Young and is it Young and Elora, possibly?
Oh, 80,000.
William Street, sorry.
William Street and Elora too.
As George and Arthur, sorry.
Yeah, I think Councillor Caldwell had also talked about one on Young Street, but
well, yeah, that was it. And we put that. Well, that's right down by going down to the
Old Max.
Yeah, Miller's is. And we did put the infrastructure in the ground, the conduit and everything there to wire it when we did the street. But that was one that in Hairston people have been asking about because of the traffic and the kids going to the pool and to the whatnot. So. But we'll have a good indication, I think, once the one in Palmerston gets done, and just see what cause and effect is from that one, and that'll give us a bit of an idea of going forward, I think, and any of the other ones that we might want to do. But if it works the way we hope it does in Palmerston, then you have a bit of a track record to work on.
Yeah. So the 80,000 is that based on the curb work that they had to do in Palmerston? So you wouldn't have that big a cost at the one in Palmerston.
Well, we did
at the corner of William and
Right.
and 23 highway or.
To meet the MTO standard, you have to bump out those curbs. So
Yeah.
at
Oh,
those
oh,
ones,
that's
you'd have to
standard.
bring them out.
Yeah,
So that's the sort
according
of
to, they have to narrow it so that the traffic sees the narrowing, Ron, that slows them down as well as the sign.
Just boy, I'll tell you, that looks complicated to
Yeah.
put in.
I mean, when the county safety committee came forward, we wanted to run with that pretty quickly, but we found out it's not so easy when you've got.
That committee was a little ahead of
bureaucracies to deal
themselves
with.
a little bit there.
So we're working toward their standard, and we'll get there. But yeah.
Well, I think having Howard here, and Howard had the knowledge,
We don't.
right?
Why do we have to follow that?
Well, that's Howard brought that standard. That's a standard that
It's
he recommended our engineer.
Well, it's the MTO
It's the
traffic
MTO
standard,
standard.
so we got to follow them even on our roads or county roads.
Okay.
We follow their design guidelines. Basically, so anyone who comes to that crossing, regardless of where it is in the province, it's the same.
Would know the same.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Any questions about Harrison Public Works? Or anything I missed? Good. Palmerston Public Works, the 1.08 million this year, 2.64 million next, and 10.75 million over 5 years. As I mentioned, that includes the downtown, but the bulk of the work for Palmerston here, with a lot of work in the industrial park, so servicing Noble Family Road over to, sorry, we've got that mostly in this year, but probably to a granular base and sewer and water in this year, and pave and finish off next, and then also paving Frank Lambert Court. Almost all those lots are now built on or underway. So we'll be able to finish that street off. And then the design of the lift station. And then with 2019 potentially building that. And that will depend on where we are with our certified site. I think the chief building official noted that he expects 4 permits for industrial development alone on that street. So Shrimp and Krasinski, and I just can't remember all of them right now, but
Right, and just out of curiosity, the shrimp operation has posted 3 jobs on our job site, Belinda, and they're kind of interesting. They're biologists and chemists, and
Wow.
and so it's kind of neat to see that progress moving forward. Yeah. So if you're a chemist or a biologist, there's a job coming there. Mary Lou, did you have a question?
Yes, I did on this one.
Yep.
Good. Okay, I've been good. I haven't said anything. When we met as the finance committee, I was a little concerned about a $7.7 million capital budget. We've never done anything that aggressive, and Bill assured me that if any year we might hit it, it might be this year, because primarily it was made up of the large project in Clifford, and that we could. But one that I am a little concerned about is our $500,000 in for the Queen Street. I think that that's a little aggressive. By the time we would get the grant application returned and find out we do have the grant, that I think all we'll be able to do in 2018 is the planning and engineer work and etc. And I just kind of feel that this is an area that maybe we could move into 2019 and make the 7.7 a little more. Little less.
So, and as the chair calls it, that one is in there. That is the OCIF top up. We put the application, and it is, I think, more tentative than some of the others. We don't know when. We may hear next month. We may hear in 3 months, and that's the difficulty. And that's the blocks going out of town. So it's roughly a $1.5 million project. The percentage of funding is very high, so that's good. The timing will be hard to say, and I guess as we started out, this isn't our final kick at the cat, and we'll know it a bit better. Yeah, it's just that hopefully in March, by the time the public meeting, we'll have a bit more, and then you've got the complication of the possible lane cut too. So it's a tough one.
Can we put like a place, like just have it as a placeholder, Mary Lou, to make sure that we really discuss again in March?
Because maybe you can explain If the capital budget is reduced, what that means to a taxpayer? Anything?
For that particular project, not too much, because I think it's something like $1,515,000, and the grant portion or the eligible cost is like 1.36. So it's not a lot. There's a significant sewer and water component too, but again, we haven't got that narrowed down enough too. So there'd be like over the 2 years, there'd be an implication, but in 2017 or 2018 in particular, there's not a large implication because we're not quite sure of.
Because the other side of that is if we don't budget for it, and then we find out we have time for it because we have a lame duck council, we can't vote on it. So I see both sides of the thing, and I don't mind leaving it in if it doesn't move our tax rate up from, that percentage or whatever of the increase is affected by this. But if it is affected, I've got a concern that we'll get to.
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping that we can, in March, we can hopefully have an idea whether our grant's been accepted or not going forward, and then have a discussion and see where it, and maybe have Gord actually give you the actual number, how it would affect that percentage on the taxes. Because I'm with you. I think a lot of it is but we sort of, because we could be lame duck in July, which we probably will be, that if we don't have it in there, it's harder if it works all out nicely, because it is a high percentage of actually, it's not one of these 25% that we have to come up with. It's one of those higher ones. I mean, they get them all confused, but some of them we have to bring more in from a tax base, some we don't. And this one is one of the ones that is probably, and it's usually fairly quickly funded, isn't it?
Yeah, so tentatively, again, it's very up in the air. I have no tax dollars going to that project. In fact, that's one I'm anticipating a carryover because I believe it's what they call the milestone. So the milestone, once you accept the project, you get a certain percentage. Once you award the contract, you get a large percentage. So if that goes, we'll actually have more money come in than what we spend during 2018. And 2019 will go the other way. Exactly. So that's why.
So but I think I have a good point bringing it up, and we'll go from there, because you're right. It's $7 million, but it's $6 million in roads and sewers. So, and we did $6 million this year.
Which is extremely aggressive. No, well, we did $6 million in total capital.
Total capital, you're right. Yeah.
Not all in roads.
Not all in roads, sir. You're right. Ron.
The question I have, if we do apply for the grant and we get the grant, can we wait a year?
We have already applied.
We've already applied.
Yes.
In September.
So they award it to us, and then we don't do the job. Do we have to do the job, work on the job right away?
Unlike the CWWF, we have a little longer. So we
could. How long
do it
can
in
we
2019?
We could go to 2019.
I'm half full guy on that one because I think we've got a word back that we're sort of on the right
all
track.
Indications
so,
are good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get that.
Yeah, but probably if it goes along, it's the same one as George, right?
No,
it's different funding.
It's a different one.
Okay, but what you were saying, I think, when Mary Lou and you and I were talking, and Bill, the budget thing there, if I remember, this one is probably, we'll be lucky if we get to know by June. Like we might get lucky by March and be approved, but whether we'll get at it,
it's similar to Jane and Increment.
Yeah,
that was the first round of OCIF, and this is kind of the second.
That's because we've only had one of this one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do it before the election.
Well, and I'm wondering if that might be the key. They might want to have as many of these out there as possible. So, but again, in 2018, what I'm gathering is even if we get the approval and we do it, we're going to get money up front, so it's not going to affect the taxes in 2018.
That's my main concern.
And that's what I think your concern is, right?
Mayor Bridge, if you did a motion to have the treasurer report back once that grant, then that'll give us a formal placeholder, and we won't.
Sure. Do you want to do a motion on that, Mary Lou? Second by Deputy Mayor Faulkner. All in favor? Okay, good. Yeah.
So there is some plant work in the sewage plant, and also some water main work there that Mark Robertson and Wayne Mesker can comment about. You can go into just to say on the wastewater treatment plant in Palmerston. We will be reporting back to you on the capacity there, which continues to improve. I think, remember, I keep harping on that growth, that 10-year growth plan that the county put on us and the number of units we need to create. And I think we're good for 5 years or so, but we will need to continue to improve our plant there. But after 5 years, we'll need to likely expand that plant. So I don't know if Mark can elaborate on that. You see, is $1.1 million over the next 3 years in there. So.
Yeah, so the $100,000 in for 2018 accounts for design work for a new clarifier, a second clarifier, which was in the original design for the treatment plant and was never built. The other portion of the $100,000 is a feasibility study for that potential future expansion to make sure the design lines up with the new clarifier going in, so we're not getting the cart before the horse. And then moving forward into the next couple of years, those numbers are to complete the construction of that second clarifier.
Excellent.
Yeah, do you do both at the same time? Plan for expansion, and are there two separate entities there?
The reason for moving ahead with the second clarifier as opposed to doing that all at one time, is that the question?
Yes.
The clarifier is in need of repair currently. It's 30 years old and has never been down for maintenance.
So if you're having a second one, you've got some redundancy, right?
Yeah, correct.
Which is what it should have had in the first place, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Would have been cheaper 30 years ago.
A little bit.
Like about a 10.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other questions? No.
When you're done.
Just in rural projects, you see in that we're looking at not a lot, only 200,000 this year, and 2.9 million over 5 years. We have done quite a lot in the rural areas, but it's never really seems to be enough. And these are the road projects which, frankly, we're on our own on. There's no real grants that we can sort of apply to do a road these days, except for connecting link highway type projects. So we do have some money in to do some design work and maybe some preparatory work on the 12th line. I know the mayor has some ideas on potential funding there he'll probably go into, and then some work on the 3rd line and the Minto Normandy town line. I know the roads and drainage foreman, Mr. McIsaac, has had discussions with Wes Gray.
Yeah.
And I think we're finally getting more coordinated together on when to do projects and so forth. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and just on the 12th line, we know we've had residents come in and explain, and if you ever driven the 12th line, especially going from where the plants are out to the county road, it's pretty dangerous, that corner. There's some need of work there. I'd like to approach and on behalf of the council approach some of the users of that, because a lot of it's caused by heavy trucks and whatnot. So we're going to try to set up a meeting with them to say, you know, can you help us contribute to this, because we're in a bit of a bind, as Bill said. Unfortunately, at one time, I don't think, Judy, you weren't young enough to remember this probably, but at Minto, I heard it from a few ex-Reeves of Minto when they used to get 90% for all the road construction, and they had to put 10% in. Those days are gone, you know, and they did a great job back then. They created a great road system. I mean, if you look at Minto's road system and you look at some of the other areas around, they had a lot of foresight. But the problem is on fixing them and getting them back, we don't get that funding anymore. So we have to look at other sources, and this has happened in some other areas where basically have gone to some of these big users and said, you know, we may have to put half loads. I don't know. We might have to put half loads on those roads or something. So we may not be able to fix them ourselves.
Yeah.
And for the amount of money that they put back into the economy as far as gravel pits and these things now, with the changes in the gravel pit rules and the lack of actual big dollars we get them for anymore, Gord, from it's changed. I know the industry is working very hard right now with TAC is it not tacker? No, tackle or tackle
Aggregates.
aggregate. And I know Dennis Lever, the mayor of Pushing, he's the president of our that association, of trying to get the tonnage money back. Like, I mean, it hasn't changed in 25 years, and I think we get a marginal amount for each ton that goes out. We're trying to get that up, and they're getting closer. So hopefully, with the government, there's been a big study, but that might help down the road. But right now, we're in a situation where these roads get banged up pretty hard in certain cases, in certain places, and we have to look at the user groups to maybe to help us do that. So I'm going to try it, and we'll see. There's no guarantee because it's worked some places, it hasn't worked other places. So
when you look at the farm equipment, just the sheer size of it, like it's now getting to the point where if you're on a highway, never mind a back road, you can't pass them because they're across the yellow line. And I mean, I don't know what to do about that, and I don't know what their tonnage is compared to, but they force everybody over to the far sides of the road and the shoulders, and then they're not safe.
Yeah.
Like
I met one Gene had to back up into a driveway.
like you cannot get past them, and I don't know what the answer there is.
The farm equipment is one thing, and that's a different. What I'm trying in this one is because of the gravel pits and the cement plant. These are very heavy ton loads going over and over roads that were never constructed to take that. But you're right about farm equipment's getting bigger. That's another problem with our roads. We have to figure out how we're going to keep them, and we'll have to figure that out. But
take that into consideration when we're looking at the reconstruction of them. Like, do you make them bigger or wider, or what do we do? Because you come down our line, you can't get past anything.
Yeah, if I could, like with the reconstruction of a road, we're looking at millions and millions of dollars to even do that. Where even to resurface, we're a quarter of that. So if we don't have the money to even resurface, I don't know how we can reconstruct.
I get that, and we're constantly patching, but the patches don't last at all.
That's correct.
So when we identify this 12th line, we might look at some different solutions here and just try that as a test case and see what we come up with. But we'll find out. But right now we have the 200,000.
I was just going to mention that in regards to farm equipment, someone told me this, and I'd like maybe someone at the back to verify it. It isn't as hard on the roads because of the size of their wheels. That it's the narrow wheels with the big units, right? The weight distribution. Can someone verify that?
Yeah.
It really depends on the type of equipment. So like your big flotation tires, no, they're not hard on the roads. The weight per square foot is like less than what us walking on the ground is. But then you do the flip side with some of these larger cash croppers hauling transport truck trailers down the road behind the tractor, which don't have weight limits that normal transport trucks do. So now you've got essentially an overloaded semi ripping down a road that's not designed for it. Though that's hard on the roads.
Yeah, I think the big wide tires and that's not so bad, but it's the fact that we have to get that crop to the everything that could be a little problem because again they're never built for that right now.
I think Mike had a comment.
I just have another thing to go along with what Terry said there too, and it depends on where they're driving on the road. A lot of the times when I'm seeing some of this farm equipment, they're actually not on the road; they're on the shoulder, which is pushing the shoulders down, which is causing even more of a problem too.
Probably the biggest.
Yeah.
It's how far they have to get over, and you as well are driving over on that shoulder because you got to get past them, and you're both breaking it down on either side. It's just the sheer size of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, we're gonna try something here and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
First, I concur. I think that's a great idea to go approach our partners in business. My question is on scheduling. I believe the 8th was scheduled, and I see it's been taken off. And can I have an update on that?
Yeah, sorry, it should be on the map there in gray, but we would, the 16th line that you see there, and again, we're basically talking about sand padding, they call it, or milling and paving. We're not reconstructing. There is some reconstruction or some realignment proposed for the 12th line. The 8th would be back in as part of the maintenance asphalt.
Yep.
We had that in there last year, and you told us to do 16th. So we'll bring that back. It should be on the map here as gray, but it wouldn't be out of capital. it's
It'll
just
be- it-
operated.
Yeah, it'll be just resurfacing.
Yeah.
That's our maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
How much is in our maintenance? I can't remember when.
Hardtop resurfacing is 280,000.
Thank you.
We did a remarkable amount of it on the 16th line last year. So
Yes, we did. It's lovely.
that 8th line should be on
that
there. I'll
gets
put it
everything.
on.
Oh, Judy, sorry.
Just wanted to comment that there has been a bit of a request that we look at maybe reducing some of the traffic on the 60.
I don't.
That heavy,
I've had that.
some of the heavy
Trucks.
trucks that are using it for a thoroughfare to get to mountains.
Mhm.
Something you can look at or not, but it's not local. It's not local people, and that I remember Councillor Ken Pike years ago saying, "I don't know why we're fixing up all these roads because it's, everybody get off the highway and use our roads." So we have to think a little bit about what we're using the roads for.
And that's a good point, Judy, because people will say to you, "Well, why don't you pave that road, or it's a gravel road now?" And the idea of the road structure is you should have highways and then county roads. Everything should be diverted. So one of the things on the 12th line I'd like to see is we might only fix from where they come out of the plants and the things, and move them over to the county road there. The county road, rather than, and then maybe do something to restrict them from coming the other way, which is on our road, which is going to get pounded some more all the way in. I mean, there's times when I'm sure that they have to take a load over this way, but they could easily go up from that little spot there, go to and move them out. Well, you can do it by half loads.
Yeah, you can.
Well, and they do, like there are certain times of the year you can't get a load of cement.
Well, no, and we do that on purpose because of the fact that we know in the spring, if they run our roads in the spring,
Historically, I think they've been really good corporate citizens, and they have taken care of the road, but they have heavy trucks, and there's a lot of construction, as we know, in Minto and beyond, so
we have to, that's why I want to sit down and talk to them about it. Like, let's figure out how we're going to do this, because we're going to try to push them, and I think we all should be looking at that. Being careful that we don't upgrade a road too well that should be just for the local traffic, not for a shortcut to get to somewhere. So with 16th line, unfortunately, we had to do that road. It was really bad, and the bridge had to be replaced. But we know that trucks try to go off Baseline Road, and we did Baseline Road too. So they come off Baseline Road and come across to the Drew and then through, when they should be heading down Baseline Road, continue on to 89 and coming along there, and then coming on the Drew Road. So it doesn't save them a lot of time. I don't know why. Other than, so go ahead.
Mayor Burge, the only way I think, and Councillor Dirksen did raise this with me, I haven't chatted with our roads and drainage foreman yet, but we'd have to put load restrictions on the 16th line. So did you want us to report back to you on that?
Well, I think that was sort of the plan that I'd have. Yeah. I would. That would.
Do you want to make a motion that you report back on?
Do you want to make that motion?
Restrictions on the 16th line.
We second it. All in favor?
We're half loads on all roads to a certain point, but
at certain times of the year.
Certain times of the year, but I'm just saying, and on that particular one, we didn't do it for the sake of having them take a shortcut for, I don't know, it's not much of a shortcut. I don't know why they're doing it, but I know they're doing it. I've had that concern from a few residents as well. They're happy for the road,
Very happy.
but they're, okay.
any more questions on rural roads?
Wish we had a lot more money, we could do a lot more. Other than that,
The last public works section is general public works. So there's SCADA systems, there's inflow and infiltration, water meter funding, street lighting. These street lights are non-real term, so they're not subject to our agreement. So we'll need a couple more new ones in that will be entirely ours. But we are using the same material. I took that sketch of the columbarium from another place just to remind us all that that's what options like that are what we're looking at to inter green remains. And there's sidewalk funding, catch basins and drainage, asset management, and vehicle replacement. And I did provide a copy of the vehicle replacement plan spreadsheet for council's information. It's getting into a lot of detail that you don't necessarily need, but at least it gives you an idea of what we have and what we're shooting for. And I guess the point I would make out of that is we are currently contributing $220,000 a year into reserves for that. And over a 16-year period, you're looking to need $333,000. So we're pretty close. We're 60% funded there. Now, the treasurer will always remind you that doesn't mean you have that in the bank, because we're spending it all the time to buy the vehicles. But if we got that amount in there, that would certainly put us in a better position moving forward each year. So our actual total number of vehicles has slightly decreased. And in that plan, you see the 2 vehicles that are not going ahead, not to be replaced. And the roads and drainage foreman can tell you about which ones those are. But the plow truck that we have in this year's budget, we hope to fund by selling the 2 surplus plow trucks and the 1 we're replacing. Now, the treasurer has been conservative and used some tax dollars to support that purchase, I think, or reserve.
Reserves, yeah.
But our roads and drainage foreman is pretty confident that between those 3 vehicles, we will be able to buy a new one. So this results of the new snow removal program that we've started this year, and if it continues to work as well as I believe it has, then we would be able to surplus those and buy a new one. And so that's what do we have those in for? 250, 300,000 in one of them, and 150 for another. So $400,000 to $500,000 in equipment that comes out of that. So I know they've worked hard. Our challenge has been people power in our winter control this year, with some movement around in that. But I think they've been very innovative, finding people to help out. I'm imagining in 2025 or whenever that plan goes to, we may have self-driving plow trucks. I don't know, but 2030 we have the plan to, so who knows what it'll look like then. But in any event, I think it's nice for you to see all the vehicles we have. There's 2 more that might get surplused, and there's 2 pickups that I think are in water this year, and I think one in fire in the future. They're looking to possibly buying surplus from our own department, so that's helpful. And then we'll get to the other ones later.
Mike, did you want to speak to the?
Yeah, no, just with regarding the surplus equipment here, if everything goes the way we've seen it so far this season, we should be able to take 3 trucks basically and make it into 1. So,
Ron?
Mike, 2 things.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure what the plan is in respect to I call it the sidewalk machine, where it has the blower on the front.
Okay.
And is there one of those for each?
Yes.
Urban area? Because I'll tell you, I'll bet you I've had 4 phone calls on compliments on the guys blowing the snow from the edge of the road back. I had seriously 4 phone calls saying, "Jeepers, what a great job the guys are doing this year." So I thought I should pass that on to you.
Well, thanks. And like we have the same units in Harrison and Palmerston, and then up in Clifford. It is a lighter unit, but it does basically the same job.
Okay.
But if it gets behind, then we take one of our other units up to help out up in Clifford as well. So
Sounds good. And I hear that the new backhoe unit has really been the new expandable scraper.
It's working out well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a few comments too on the fact that we've been able to attack some of the snowbanks on the downtowns sooner, and that I believe we did a contract the other night, and it was a lot less because we didn't have as much, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
So we had to do a contract the other night, but it went well, and
partial contract. Just
partial contract.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep up the good work. I think that's really working well.
Thanks.
I just hope there's no more snow coming.
Right. Starting on the 20th, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, you're gone.
I say it's clear.
Yeah. Anything else? Bill, do you have anything else on that?
No, unless you want information on SCADA systems.
No.
Flow and infiltration. That's an important one. Basically, we're looking at sewer needs in there, and then we plan on about 10 manholes, or whatever correct term you're supposed to use for those structures. Sewage structures. A year. So we're not as aggressive as we have been on that.
But we've done a lot.
We've done a lot, and we're getting headway. And I think wastewater foreman would like to be a little more strategic on it in terms of having the information done and then going ahead in that fashion. Good. Water general projects, street lights. The water foreman does our street lights, so he can tell you about where we're putting new ones. There's a few planned for this year to light up some areas.
Yeah, just on the street lights, when we're doing the downtown project there in Clifford, there's some of those LED lights going out, so I'm going to extend some of those out to the north end there to lighten that up. And we'll take some of those also lights there to Middle Pines to lighten up some of that area there that's pretty dark out in that area too. Palmerston, same thing. We got some dark areas, and Harriston, we just want to lighten them up. Chris has come forth with one that's down around Maxey Drive and that, where got an intersection there where there's no lights, so it's going to be one that's be a little more, but it's going to be, you're going to have to dig underground in that. So we already got that pole and stuff on order. We put some of that was in last year's budget and stuff. So we're just trying to, at this point, just trying to light up, make it better for people that are walking around and even for driving or whatever. So, and make better use of, like in the Clifford thing, reuse what we've got and try to use that in other locations also.
Are we doing anything on the old trailer park in Harrison where we?
They're on.
They're on.
They're on already.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We put them on. They've been on for whatever it is.
You did them for
a month or so. Yeah. But we did get them refed back out onto Young Street, and they are on and running now. Perfect. So yeah, so we redid that.
I know we did them for the fair, and I didn't know they were still on. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, no, on the fair I run them off a generator just so we'd have the lights, but we did get them refed and rehooked up by West Aerial. So
facilities is our sort of last major area of capital. Facilities manager is here, and we worked closely with him on cutting his. And he was very accommodating. So the 5-year plan for there is shown. It's $450,000 in 2018, and was it 1.5 million or so, roughly over 5 years. So we can go through each area if you'd like. Al is here. It's awfully quiet.
He is here. Oh, they got the microphone down there.
You want the microphone? Get him the microphone. So ever since you started that band up, he needs a microphone in front of him.
No, I don't, Airbridge.
Once we get him going, though.
Yeah.
Okay, it's rather shorter than what I originally anticipated. Mr. Doig up in Clifford has recommended that we do replace one of our compressors. Way back when we did do a small renovation at the Clifford Arena, he did overhaul them, and we'd like to replace one this year. Also in Clifford, we'd like to look into some park upgrades. A lot of community money hopefully is going to come back through this, mentioning funds from Homecoming, the Rotary Club, CRA, Great Lakes Scrub Club, to name a few. Some of the projects we're hoping to be looking at through a community meeting, of course, are going to be the land purchase, upgrading some drainage around the ball diamond, signs throughout the park, doing some decking around the pavilion for the ball diamond, picnic tables, doing a driveway through the John Street Road allowance entering the park, and possibly some work in the playground. So with municipal budget and some assistance from the community. Those are some of the things we'll be looking at, and we'll finalize that through a community meeting.
Just on that, I mean, the amazing amount of money they raised at the anniversary or the homecoming, and I was at the meeting, and it's going to be good to have that public meeting, because when people see all that money pouring back into their facilities, I think they'll be pretty proud, and what a great job they did to do that. So looking forward to that public meeting.
Okay, we're looking at doing some small lighting projects inside as well, and that's about it for Clifford. Going through to Palmerston, we're looking at a replacement of the arena lights. The lighting in there, again, we're into a situation where we can't buy parts for it any longer, so we're looking at doing the lights. Replacing the Olympia. This was passed this past year, and we're unable to get the new Olympia this calendar year, so it'll come in next year. We're looking at doing some work on the pool lines and installing a water heater at the swimming pool. Starting some work in the auditorium. I do believe we'll probably be looking at replacing the floor. We've had some renovations done in that community center where the cement is starting to heave, and we do have to do something with the floor in that room before somebody trips and hurts themselves. We're looking at doing a little bit of work at Lawrence Park. You'll see pictured in the slide, just tidying up the pavilion and painting the small facility, the washroom concession facility that you can see in the picture. And we've got some money budgeted as well for the train museum and to paint the 81 out by Main Street. Are there any questions up till this point? As we get into Harriston, we've spoke about doing work at the swimming pool. I have spoke with Ryan Hill, the president of the Harriston Kinsman Club, and we'll be meeting to go over what we think or how we should proceed with repairs. I guess in a nutshell, what we've got is our skimmers and returns in this particular facility are quite old, and I do believe it's 1975. They're starting to show signs of cracking. We did put some epoxy in this year and repaired some of the leaks temporarily, and it saved quite a bit on our water bill. Matt would attest to that. So we'd like to go ahead and have these things replaced. So this pool's going to last a nice long time and be good for a number of years. We've had some discussions, and again, we're going to have another community meeting in Harriston just to go over. Bill's got that slide up. The Harriston Fairgrounds. We would like to speak about other parklands at this meeting, but focus mainly on the fairgrounds. Being a floodplain, there's probably some things that we cannot do out there. It's tough for us. The Conservation Authority is not going to let us put up permanent structures, but I'd like to focus on some naturalization and fixing up what we do have there. And if there are some small additions to be made, this would be a great time to do it. We're going to get as many community groups out to discuss this as we possibly can. And outside of that, we've got a few doors we'd like to do some work on in Harriston, and we've budgeted some money for some smaller facility upgrades, as we'll be hosting the hospital gala in Harriston this year. I guess some of the other items on our budget are going to include new scoreboards for our hockey arenas. Unfortunately, back in the good old days, we used to get these donated through our, we'll say a Pepsi or a beverage contract. That's just not available for us anymore. These scoreboards are about 15 years old, and again, it's starting to get hard for us to get parts to repair them. Outside of that, I guess it's just the nature trails. There's a little bit of money put aside there to do some signage and some work on stone dust.
Just on that, I've had a some discussion at the county budget meeting was brought up, and they're going to be maybe looking at extending their program. There was some money that wasn't used by other municipalities, and I don't see why it shouldn't stay in the trail system. The municipalities that are using it, and I'm going to bring it up at county to ask them to see if they can do another 5-year plan, because we've certainly taken advantage of it, but there was money left in the reserve that was put aside for the last 5 years. So I'm going to bring that forward, and I think some other councillors are talking the same things. Hopefully, I noticed in your comments here that looking at the county unless they reconsider. So there might be some reconsidering there, so that would help us.
I just, my comment, and Greg can back me up on that, who's done a lot of work for us on the trail committee. One of the things that we have researched and come up with is that by putting, if the trail is prepared properly and you put the stone dust on, it can last up to 20 years, as opposed to if you don't do it right, then it lasts that much less and your expenses actually are incurred more. So the only danger I see in dividing the monies up over a 5-year period is that I think if we're going to do the trail and the stone dust, our strategic plan shows it done in 3 phases, and so that it would, I'd like to see it done correctly the first time, and then we don't have to look after it. The expense later on is going to go down substantially. Thank you for that.
Anything else? Good, Al. Are you done? No, you're still going?
Yes, he's done.
Are you done?
Good, Al.
They really cut the heck out of me, Mayor Bridge.
I know. That's all right. No. Listen, all I can say is over the last probably 10 years, and certainly the last few years, our parks and our trails are looking better every year. And if you think about the money that the towns have put in, or the town has put in, you think of the money that the people in the municipality, in Clifford community, Drew looking after theirs all the time. We've got and what the Palmerston Lions have done in their park, in the park in Palmerston. Just
in Harrison.
In Harrison, we did the little park downtown, and then we've got the pool and everything. Without those service groups and without those volunteers, we give them the seed money. But like if we actually look to see what the actual dollars are that was spent, it just balloons me. I think probably 10% or 10 times more was actually spent in those parks because of all that community effort.
Yep. Not
just the labor and everything else we talked about. We can't put a dollar figure to it. I guess we could at the minimum wage, and then we'd figure out what that would be, right? That we would never have been able to afford to do what we're doing. And you know what? From Belinda's, how has that helped us in economic development? It's helped us immensely in the fact that Minto is a great place for people to come and visit and go, and that's why we're attracting the people. That's why we've got the people moving into and we've got the building stats that we've got. It's a community effort, and it just amazes me that has been accomplished over the last 8 years, or even 10 years going back. I would go back farther, yeah. Because I think when did you start the Judy, you remember when did you start the Palmerston Park? That was like, it'd be over 14 years ago, right?
1998.
1998 when it was sitting like a desolate thing. And
20 years.
Yeah. Palmerston started until Minto took it over, and
that's 20 years.
20 years. It's 20 years. So it goes way back. It's been a great effort on everybody's part.
Love a sweat.
Yep. Oh.
Okay. Our last section of Capital Mayor Bridge is administrative. It has 60, 70, 82,000 this year, combined out of buildings, computer replacement, and software, the pickup truck for the building department, and asset management and record keeping. The building department pickup is funded out of building permit revenues, entirely out of reserve, both of them. So I don't know how old the chief building official's truck is, but that other one is. It's
2008.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So our plan on most pickups is 5 to 7 years, so they're due. In terms of buildings, we've kind of been patching here,
You bet.
which has been fine. I think it looks a little better back here with the new door and so forth, and we got accessible. With our staffing needs, I'm not sure I think we might need a little interim addition at the front. Remember that big concrete step is kind of separating from the front of the building, so we're keeping an eye on that. There's a little bit of money here for that. If we were to take that out and change the grade and put a small little foyer out there, we could better use some of the space we have out there. Maybe move a desk right to that front door. That would get us a couple extra workstations for a few years. I know the senior managers have looked at some kind of expansion to this building, maybe joining in here, but we don't see that happening in the next couple years. So we have a little bit of money in there, but we're not planning a major expansion at the town office. I think we have a good building. It's worked pretty well, but we do have a bit of a functional problem out front. That big concrete chunk is maybe due for coming out.
And that's the last place that we never really checked for any kind of leakage into our basement, right?
Right. So other than the major leakage on the 23rd
Well,
that came up
yeah.
through a sewage backup,
Well, I guess that
actually
one
it had been pretty good. So,
but we have fixed it all up. It'd be nice to make sure that we don't have any little spot where it could come.
It's kind of funny because even that little bit at that front door I think probably helped because it was slanting into our building, but it would leak down there when we never expected it to leak, and when we thought it would, it didn't. So we're not 100% sure exactly what's going on, but we've had a good look at it. The chief building official or facilities manager. But my feeling is probably that front thing coming off would likely do it.
So then our major front entrance would be right out here. Is that what you're talking about?
No,
that's what I thought we had originally planned.
We had looked at that, I think, in past years. Up where my office is and where Quinn Porter sits, you would see that if you put a little foyer on, you could move her desk right up to the door, and then you'd have all that space in behind.
Oh, so just add on.
So that little foyer there would become your waiting room.
Okay.
And then you would have a little area, because right now, when you get up, what would that be, an east wind? It blows the doors right open. You can't close them. So,
yeah, that's right.
And they're leaky, and from an energy perspective, it's not good. But it's not bad. I mean, it's a good building, but I think that little change could get quite a bit more space in there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And use that front foyer where we had the Christmas tree and stuff. Anyway, take advantage of the space you have without doing a major thing.
So you think 10,000 is enough to do that?
Well, probably not. No, but
definitely not.
Yeah, but I on the other hand, I don't think we want to spend 50 on it if it's that. So we'll have we might be able to pull that thing off ourselves and put a curb in, and we'll have to look at it. The addition, if we did one, would probably be something like 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 or something like that. That would be it. But then you'd have to put probably another door in, and
you've got to add 0 too.
Starts adding on. So we don't want to make a meal of it by patching things. So we've got a little bit of money in there to look at it again.
Okay. All right.
Talk about maybe I'll just talk a bit about the computers and that too. Yep. So again, with the flood, some of this stuff we really wanted to do in 2017. So our primary areas to look at are, I think, improving our computer backup system. I'm not entirely happy with the way it's working right now, and I think we need a bit more redundancy. And connectivity issues, both at the fire halls and the arenas. It seems like an ongoing thing. Matt and I sat down with our IT people, and they're trying to come up with some other solutions. And then again, relating to the flood, our SCADA thing, so we had to rearrange things and move it here. So much of our computer stuff, it's less buying desktops and that. It's more software licenses and connecting the networks and that type of thing. So we've kind of identified some priorities, and hopefully we can get through it this year. So,
questions?
So, Mayor Bridge, that's our capital proposal to you. It's outlined on the summary report on pages 7 and 8. So that's the project-specific capital plan as it currently stands. And what you've told us today is that you'd like us to review the Queen Street and Palmerston project as far as funding, and whether we will need $500,000 this year for that project, and that maybe transfer some more over to next year if that makes our overall picture look a little bit better. As I mentioned, we funded $32 million in the last 8 years and another 7 point some this year, so you're close to $40 million over 2 terms and another 31.5 to come. So that's a lot of work, and certainly we've been trying to make sure we put the ratepayers' money to good work, whether it's property tax or water and sewer rates. We think this 5-year project plan will help this council and the next with their planning. We'll be shovel ready, 5 or 6 projects in there that could qualify. We're staying within our fiscal accountability plan, more reserves than borrowing, even though we know our reserves are not all liquid. And we do know that 7.7 million is ambitious, but it's only 3.7 if you take out 2 major projects. So if we do it, as I said to Councillor Caldwell, Finance Chair, it's this year will be the one we do it. So we'll see. So it's certainly been a pleasure putting this together, and I want to thank the patience of our public works people with me helping them with this year's plan. I don't know whether I helped or hindered, but and also with the department heads and treasury. Obviously, the treasurer has a huge role. I mentioned before he has more spreadsheets than anyone I've ever seen, and he prepares them faster than anyone I've ever seen too. So, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer.
Australian.
I've always wondered how or if it could be done. We're anticipating a lot of growth, as Terry has reported several meetings in a year that we anticipate growth after growth, and we're building and industrial sites are growing, and obviously there are going to be more people employed, more people needing places to stay. We should be anticipating a lot more revenue coming into our community. Do we anticipate that with our budget at all, or how do you go about anticipating that?
So I can never pry any of that revenue from the treasurer. He always brings it in his own way, but I did notice that most of the Ann Street homes are not on our roll yet. So I don't know, maybe he could comment more on that.
So you basically got 2 sources. You've got tax revenue and you've got water and sewer revenue. So right now I think the water and sewer revenue is a little easier to predict because you get the occupancy permit, we got them. It's always a delicate thing. I don't have any specific amount for increase. I do have potentials for appeals. There's a couple of large appeals that we've had no new information on. Basically, I think we still have 60,000 in there too. As long as we can keep MPAC within the 3 years, we do get our money eventually, and that too. So it's kind of a windfall. I noticed if you read the Wellington Advertiser, the county increase I think is phrased as 2.5%, but it's really 5 with assessment growth. Well, at ours, it's really any figures we've given you are before assessment growth, and that's traditionally run in Minto about 1.5% or so of our revenue. Some years up, some years down. Like our building is doing like incredibly well, and in 2017, some of that was offset by people putting in their appeals, and it filters down too. But yeah, so if you figure 1.5 or something, that's $70,000 or so that hopefully we'll finish that up, and that'll be like our share of that. So, but it's not explicitly.
We can put that back into trails.
See what I mean? It's hard.
Wouldn't that be great?
Well, and Councillor Elliott, it's a good point in the sense that it frustrates me too that MPAC can't get this done a lot faster. I mean, like we're constantly after them to get our 2 years ago, 3, and if you look at our past 3 years, we've had some substantial growth, not only just in residential but commercial, industrial. We just saw some of them just hit just recently in some of our projects that were almost 3 years old in our industrial park in Palmerston, and that's scary because if we don't get them within that 2 to 2.5 year grace, we lose that 1 year, and yet we've done the infrastructure, we've done everything, we've done all our job, so we're constantly on impact. In fact, what we've from the county level, and Gordon knows this from his days, we're saying to impact, like they keep bragging about the fact that they're cutting their costs. Well, it's not helping us if you're cutting your costs and you're cutting
Not
people
yet.
out of your budget because we can't get inspectors to go out and do the job.
That's right.
Or do it right the first time so we don't get all these appeals. Because that's the other problem. If they do the inspections right and they come up with the right assessment, people aren't going to appeal them. Or if they do appeal them, they're going to be dismissed quickly. But when we're constantly having them run around do all these appeals and then having all this running around, so do it right the first time. So we're saying to them, if you have to increase your budget, because guess what? All the municipalities here, we pay their salaries. So it's a strange world that MPAC is paid by us, and yet we find their service less than sufficient. Now, they just changed their CEO again.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that's going to help or hinder or whatever. But we've gone back to them and said, if you need more resources, hire the damn resources. It's cheaper for us to have you have more people there than having it not work.
I think the treasurer's 1.7% is a pretty good figure. The way I look at it, if our average house is 200 and some thousand and it pays 3,000 in taxes, we probably get about $1,000 a house property tax, and maybe $1,000 a house water and sewer, depending on how many people live in it. So, on Ann Street, you might get 14,000, 15,000 a year from those new houses.
Now, I sit down at Federation Community Municipalities, and I sit down with places that I have a decrease in revenue. So the good news is, Ron, we're having to increase because they're having to deal with inflation and infrastructure that's already in the ground, and they've lost half their population. And how I wouldn't want to be sitting in those councils. So this council, we have to watch it. And I tell you, Gord is on it like a bloodhound. And I know the county people, they watch it. In fact, we have 3 people, or at least 2 people in county. All they do is check MPAC out and are on their backs the whole time. Well, that's 2 people we shouldn't have to have. But it's better to have them and get the results. And some of them are past MPAC employees. So it's something that's constantly being done. So, but it's a good point. Jean.
I guess my question is somewhat along the same line. I was a little confused when we went across the 5-year capital planning or plan funding, which is page 15, I believe. So we're anticipating, or we generated 252 in tax revenue in 17. We're anticipating 105 in 2018, which is less than 50%. And by 2020, we're down to 65. I'm not sure what those figures.
Where are you, Jean?
Under revenue. It's page 15, 5-year capital plan funding.
That's in the summary report?
In the summary report?
No, in the
the capital budget 2018 council presentation.
All right, let me just get there.
So I was confused by those numbers. I'm going, that doesn't look terribly promising. If we're dropping our revenue by 400%. No.
Yeah, those. Sorry, I'm thinking.
I see
the reliability gets less.
Liability gets less.
The reliability of the figures is less.
Quite
so
a
I'm
bit
just
less.
guessing that we're getting $2 million, and so the tax, you see, I've gone like $10,000 a year, and so that revenue figure is basically the balance. Based on
Say
the
that
other
again?
figures.
Yeah.
So see the tax figure, the second last from the bottom, the 510, the 520.
Okay.
That one. So that one we're saying we have been adding $10,000 per year.
Okay.
So we think that the OCI formula again. I'm saying we're have commitments
guessing that
to
it's
2020.
300. We're assuming it's going to go up considerably.
Yeah, and we know that for sure. We know up to 2020. So that is there.
Okay.
The borrowing, just kind of an
that's
estimate.
pretty scary.
Yeah, and the reserves, that's there. Grant, as CEO had said, we aim for $1 million, and we've been pulling in sometimes 3, so maybe 2.
So
and
the revenue is just
what's
we're
left
anticipating what we
over.
need left over. Okay, because it started it. So I'm going from the top down.
Yeah.
Wait a minute here.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
I'm lost. I'm not an accountant, but I can figure out 400% less because I want to go buy that.
I guess what a revenue would be if we did get a developer contribution.
Okay.
Towards or if we like the gravel pit, we might put it under there. We sold that.
So is that what contributed to the large amount for 2017 partially?
The gravel pit sale, we did use some of it, but not all of it.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have an exact figure on that, but I think
I
we got
just-
610,000
Right.
from the unallocated reserve and the sale.
Right.
And do you remember, Gord, how much of that you used?
I think about 150 right now, and like again, that could change between now. But I was anticipating we'd have a lot more. We only have, I think, $68,000 of tax money going to public works, even though that's like 85% of earning, just
Okay.
because of
So
that.
the way to go with that chart is from the top up, and that's what we would need to do to balance the budget.
Yeah,
If we get more, it's to the good.
Yeah, you've got the top of it is the expenditures.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
no, I
that
got that
drives
part.
what's underneath.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Just
yeah.
go backwards.
Yeah.
And if we
Sure.
get more than 65,000, bonus.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I was just a little confused by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. There'll be
Yeah.
those
There's
expenses.
no
I
way
think
those will be.
the point was we're not lacking projects. I think
No.
that was the point. We're not lacking projects.
Mayor Bridget, the good thing about that is we used to put $1 million or $2 million in grants and laugh, oh, we'll never get
Never
that.
get it.
No.
Yeah.
We haven't got that problem.
No, that's
It's,
the good.
it's our share of that. That's
Right. That's the
that
issue.
drives that
That's
borrowing
the
number up.
And yet, how do you not take advantage of it? Because how would you ever get anything done then?
Exactly.
We'd be funding everything ourselves, like the roads.
That's our
They
main
wouldn't get
quandary, right? Yeah.
And
Going around
and
here.
we are working at FCM on that, on trying to do what we call stacking, and having the governments allow us to maybe our portion use a couple different grants. So if we have a grant that we can't, it's at 25% that we have to fund, maybe we can get 10% from another grant area to fund that.
Yeah.
And then we're also working on the whole sustainability. We'd love to see the feds do more
Yeah.
of the gas tax type thing, which would give us all a little bit more peace of mind than
Predictable.
running around having to figure out which capital
Yeah.
programs they want to do. But to give both the province
They'd be
and the
good.
feds a lot of credit,
Mhm.
they've recognized that 9% tax base, the 60% of what we've got for infrastructure that we
Mhm.
own, and they are bringing money to us. It's just how there's coming slowly, and sometimes it's not coming in the right ways for us to take total advantage in it. And we've been able to do it. I know other
Mhm.
communities that have sat there and said they have to watch their things rot because
Yeah.
they don't have the 25% and they can't borrow for it. They can't find it. So and that's where
Mhm.
Mary Lou and we've all talked about this debt thing. We have to always look at to make sure
Yeah.
that
Well, that was one of the letters, again, between Christmas and
Yep.
New Year's. The CWWF is coming back,
Yep.
but we don't have any details. So
Exactly.
it was a 50% federal, 25% provincial. And
Yeah.
we'll see how
so
that
those are
goes.
things. Yeah. Really.
I say this at the end of every budget. I don't know how to say it a different way, but with all the department heads here, once again, on behalf of council, I just want to thank you very much for all your work. Our treasurer and CAO are unbelievable in the way that they put this together. You've given them the numbers to work with, and I want to thank you. It makes our budgeting so much easier. I've always said we are so lucky because by the time it comes to us, it is a budget. It's a livable budget. And if there's any changes to it, they're minor because you've done the work before council even sees it. And once again, I just want to thank you for all your hard work. I know it's very difficult. Like Al says, he had twice the list and it got cut back. But it got cut back before it even got to us. So that's the nice part about it is we're not forced to make those decisions. You've made them and you know what is critical and where the money has to be spent. On behalf
Thank
of
you.
council, can we thank our...
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well spoken. All right. So I think I just got no other questions or comments. I don't know if you can do it any better than Mary Lou just did it. So thanks everybody. So moved by Councillor Caldwell, seconded by Councillor Dirksen. The committee of the whole convenes into the Town of Minto Council. All in favor? Yep.
Rich, were we supposed to approve the minutes from the December meeting?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
What we would like to
Well, they
do
were
is
there, so I just wanted
Right.
to... Okay.
so the minutes are there for your information, and then there will be a set prepared for here. But we don't necessarily ask you to approve them because we don't want them to be final. You may want to
Yes.
Yeah.
revisit items
Yeah.
after the open house.
So
or
in
whatever.
March, I think we finalize it
Yep, that's good.
when we're ready to do the actual final budget.
That makes sense.
Thanks for that. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Deputy Mayor Faulkner. The Council of Town of Minto adjourns the meeting again. Call the mayor. Thank you for a good budget meeting, everybody. Thank you.
Good job.
2 hours.